After 10 long years of me being stuck inside of the mind of a singular dwarf, I decided I needed a change of pace. And while I was resting in between major projects, it finally hit me. I needed to become a turtle. And after pondering for many minutes what that might mean, I realized what I actually needed. I needed a break. Something casual. Something easy. Something not nearly as demanding as the overwhelming natures of Dwarf Fortress. So where could I find a thing like that? Fortunately for me, it turns out that Caves of Cud is coming to 1.0 on December 5th, meaning I need to get prepared, and that will absolutely satisfy the need for something easy and casual after the long amount of time that I've spent playing other games. But for those of you who are uninitiated and unaware, what is Caves of Cud, you might ask? It's an open-world RPG, and a traditional roguelike, which originally started off as some sort of tabletop project made by this guy who goes by Unnormal on the internets, and this other person named Jason, as well as several assistants that they have hired in the background doing art and writing. Caves of Cud is a massive open-world RPG, with permadeath, and it certainly doesn't like to pull any punches in the difficulty department. And if you think that this game is easy, then you are definitely in for a big surprise, which means maybe I won't actually be getting my desire for something easy and casual. But I can hope. By default, the game is played in classic mode, where if you die, you die. Your save is gone, there's no backups. Alternatively, if you're new to the game, I recommend playing in roleplay, where you gain experience by killing things as you would normally, however, you get to save at towns and major locations. Unlike in the classic mode, where you die on impact when killed, and then have to restart from the very beginning. Saving is a great quality of life feature if you are new and value your time. There's also a third option, which is Wander, where you only gain experience from exploring notable locations. And everybody is neutral to you, so combat is a non-concern. In this run, we will be playing Classic, because I do not value my free time, and I expect to die horribly, and suddenly. Oh, and for this playthrough, we're not going to be doing the main written questline, which is an amazing story that is worth witnessing, with 30-ish hours of RPG gameplay. We're just going to be sandboxing it, and I'm going to make a Turtle Man. The first ability that I'm going to take for my Mutant Turtle Man, one of two options in the game, there are mutants and Truekin. Truekin are cyborgs that use computer bits and implants to upgrade their bodies, whereas mutants are mutated humanoids that were once human and maybe now something a little bit stranger. Everything from multi-limbed, multi-legged, multi-hearted, multi-headed creatures with the ability to shoot fire out of their hands and a stinger, or a smelly turtle man, which is what I'm making here. We're going to go with our carapace, which is going to give us a shell and work as armor, although it's going to stop us from being able to equip armor. We're going to be taking double muscled, which gives us plus extra strength and 15% chance to daze my opponent on a successful melee attack. And we're also going to be taking horns, because horns have extremely good armor penetration and scale very well with high strength builds. We're also taking night vision because I don't like to carry torches. And because we're running out of skill points, I'm going to make us socially repugnant, which makes everybody hate us a little bit more, which is fine because I'm a turtle. And then we're going to take sleep gas generation, so I can fart people to sleep. From there, I need to select my stats. We're taking 23 strength, which determines how effectively we penetrate my opponent's armor with melee attacks. A little bit of agility so that I don't always miss when I try and hit things. Toughness, which makes me more stronger and gives me HP. Intelligence is irrelevant for a turtle. I don't brain much. Brain very smooth. I am turtle. For willpower, that score modifies our cooldowns and our activated abilities, and determines our ability to resist mental attacks. And our ego, well, I don't have much of that in real life, so we kept that score nice and low. So buying things is going to be hard, and our mental mutations aren't going to be great, but that's fine. I don't have any anyways. I am turtle. And after all of that prep work, we're going to start in a random Salt Dunes village, because my starting class that I selected was a nomad, which gets bonuses for in the desert, such as not having to deal with water as much, and being able to produce water from the water suit. That is definitely just recycling my urine. One final thing I will note is if you are new to the game, I recommend starting in Yappa, or Joppa, or however you're supposed to pronounce that. And now that we've survived the absolutely terrifying process that is character creation, it's time to give our monstrosity a name. Of course, this took some deciding. We started off with Shelly, but that didn't quite feel complete. So we considered Shelly the Smelly, but personally I thought that was a bit too much of a mouthful, and didn't quite suit our hero and the odd circumstances that their life exists in. So instead, we decided to shorten it down to simply Schmelly, our brave wanderer of the wilds of Cud, who will probably meet an untimely demise. Our friend, shell and all, as they embark on the caves of Cud. After arriving in the village of Tauzwan, Schmelly looks up and notices that on the horizon, Cud's jungles strangle chrome steeples and rusted archways to the earth. Further and beyond, the fabled spindle rises above the fray and pierces the cloud-ribboned sky. Having a real quick peek at my inventory, I can see that I have a Desert Kiris as my weapon in my left hand, and I'm holding a torch in my right, which isn't super important. And I quickly set my horn as my primary weapon, because my horn is my strongest source of damage right now. It has significantly higher armor penetration than my weapon, and I won't get anything better for quite some time. You can see the Set Primary Limb button down at the bottom of the inventory screen. As for the UI here, just a real quick primer. Money is water. Water is very important. Water being fresh water. You'll find salt water everywhere, but drinking it will practically kill you. Health bar is obvious, it's right below that. A little bit over to the right here is your quickness stat. This affects your attack speed, as well as abilities, picking things up, equipping or unequipping armor, or weapons, or somebody's face if I happen to pick it up. But I'd need to cut it off first, obviously. Right next to that are the letters MS. That is our movement speed, which is just to give us a direct idea of how quickly we are moving. Next to that is armor value, dodge value, and MA, which stands for mental armor. Some enemies in Caves of Cud will try to attack you with their minds, which is particularly scary if you run into somebody whose head looks like a Tesla coil. And beware the interdimensional time wizards, but I don't think we'll have to worry about them too much. Right next to that, we can see it is Harvest Dawn on the 11th of Nivvunut. I don't know how to pronounce any of these. That's essentially time of year, the date, and the season. And right there is a little icon that indicates our current place in the day-night cycle. And of course, XP is pretty self-explanatory, and down at the bottom is our abilities hotbar. Something else that's worth keeping an eye on, but I'll point it out if anything happens, is down here, where it says active effects. If we get a buff, positive or negative, put against us, something will be listed here. If you're playing the game, it is very much worth being aware that early signs of illness will appear here. So if your character starts to get sick, or if you have a serious injury or a debuff of some sort, it'll be listed there. It's not always that clear, so do keep an eye on it if you are playing. And now that you're aware of all of the attributes, I'll also note that they are visible within the attributes UI, which looks like this. While it's not a piece of information that I have open very often while I'm playing, it is a very useful reference. I'm not going to be showing this too much during the gameplay itself, because this is more intended as a condensed movie. But this is where all of that information on your own character can be found. With all of that housekeeping out of the way, let's begin exploring our starting town. The starting towns are completely randomly generated, and are filled up with random characters of random species and alignments. But I'm looking for my quest givers, after I read some of the town's history, of course. Note that if you're auto-exploring, you will automatically examine anything with writing on it, or painting or engravings, which is usually where you find these histories. It's important to read them by either looking at them or auto-exploring, or at the very least, looking at them briefly without reading the flavor text, because you can get quests from them, as well as learn about locations. After I'm done exploring, I run over to this clay oven. It will contain the town's local food. It's a unique meal that will give us some buffs. Let's see what it does. After consuming it, I begin to metabolize the meal, gaining the following effect for the rest of the day. Whenever you reflect damage, there's a 50% chance you toast your area in pyrokinesis at level 5 to 6. That seems really good on its face, but reflecting damage is rather unlikely, although that is a funny effect if nothing else. Kind of like a flamey force field. Now I'm gonna head over to the town's quest givers. There will be 2 of them. Every starting town has them, and they will give me 2 starting quests. It'll give me some direction, and allow me to start leveling Schmelly up, before we work our way off into the wilds. It seems that the name of our first quest giver is Drinksnir Serpent the Shrewd. If you need to find these characters, just ask anybody in town for work and they'll direct you towards them. But this fellow welcomes us, is very kind of him. He even offers us their fresh water, which is a big deal. If you look at a character, you can see who likes them and dislikes them, and if they have good faction alignments, you can share your water with them. As you can see, our turtle is very dumb and doesn't know what this means, but once water has been shared, other characters will begin to like you or dislike you based on who likes this person. Essentially, manipulating the factions in the game. There's a lot of them, including cats. After asking him for work, he responds, "Friend." There was a time where my tribe used to spend our days hunting and gathering, but after discovering the purity of fish, we changed our ways and fashioned new rites of passage. Unfortunately, Ill lost our Fishian's Skillsoft multi-weapon proficiency. Would you seek it out and return it to us? I hear it has been taken to a Snapjaw fort. We'll reward you for your service. I am positive that Schmelly has no idea what that item is, and that is totally fine, but I accept his quest. Thank you, Mr. Smartman. Me, Smoothbrain Turtle, will go whack the knoll people, because that's what Snapjaws are. Knolls. But before we run off, we have to go to our second quest giver, who is Chugs in the Feathered Serpent, the legendary rifler. Moon, Sun, Wisdom, and Will. Wandering the Silt Dunes is no way to thank fish. You know, I'm starting to think it's kind of funny that these dudes all live in the desert and they like fish. Anyways, this guy offers me the quest of, I bow down to the visiting hare that you are here, friend. I have a charge for you. The other day, I trekked to a Snapjaw fort and saw some fish-esque bear jerky. To be my muse, I must get a hold of it. Procure it and I'll pay you for your work. What do you think? Wandering the salt dunes is no way to thank fish. Must be a, turn of phrase, I guess? I will take his quest, and now I'm kind of curious. Are they both in the same location? Best to check the world map and find out. This is the world map. It's the one static part of Caves of Cud. While all of these zones underneath these little tiles that you see displayed here are randomly generated in every single different adventure you will have in Cud, the grand zone layouts remain the same. And right there is a little spot, which is a object of importance. It's our point of interest, our quest location. Holding down tab on the keyboard highlights it and makes it very clear. And that is indeed our one Snapjaw fort, meaning I only have one place to go to get both of my quest items, which I'm quite thrilled about. I'm sure we'll get distracted on the way though as I start to fast travel and, yep, we notice some ruins nearby. I guess we shall investigate. It's an easy way to get some experience after all. Bopping around a little bit, we find some friendly riflers. Normally these guys wouldn't be friendly, but our starting alignments allowed us to be friends with them. I find some books, and I'm too stupid to read them, so I just get very brief summaries for the little bits that I find legible. Someone's been camping here, must be the riflers. And I stumble upon some very angry seed-spitting roots. These things shoot seeds like projectiles as bullets. They're kind of mean, but we should be able to dispatch of them before they kill me, hopefully. And it looks like a few headbutts and slashes with my knife have done the trick. I also spotted a statue off here in the distance, and I examined it, and it gave us a quest to find whatever the hell that thing is. Thanks, I guess. It appears to be located in a place called Sugamarad. Oh well, back to the overworld. Let's continue moving. And instead of going directly to the Snapjaw fort, I decided to drop into the swamps just before. Gotta shoot a couple fish in ponds to level up a little bit. It truly is just free XP in the early game, although they're neutral, so you have to force attack them. Very simple on the computer, you just hold control on the keyboard. I've also gotten a little peckish, so we're gonna cook us a meal, which can be done at any time, unless you have the skills for it, in which case then it's like making potions with abilities, like the one we saw at the beginning. This meal includes a pinch of painted witchwood, a smidgen of honorable sesame, and a smidgen of swaddled croc meat. We toss them in a pot and stir, and consume! Back to the main event of bonking the crap out of a bunch of fish, and we level up. Now that I'm leveled up, I'm going to attack these glow pads. They're sort of like sentient lily pads that glow. They're slightly tankier than the fish, but they're still no match for me. Moving into the mountain regions, closer to that Snapjaw fort that we are looking for, I've encountered a bunch of Snapjaws. We must be getting close. And yeah, they're a very weak early game enemy, but there's a bunch of them here. So I'm just going to let loose my fart gases to try and make them fall asleep, which is down on the bottom of my hotbar, and then back away. And wait for them to follow me so I can pick them off one by one, so I don't turn into an arrow pin cushion. Easy enough. I also get to attack some free bacon. Tussocks of fur, dressed skin stretched over taut muscle. Upright he stands, but he looks ready to drop onto fours. His snout snarls and his ears twitch. He barks, and his hyena tribesmen answer. They're swarmers, so if there's a bunch of them next to each other, they get stronger, but they're still pretty weak. No trouble at all for the turtle boy. And sometimes they drop some decent stuff, so I swipe an iron battle axe from them and equip it after moving my knife to my other hand. Anyways, back to where the rest of them were, to clean them up. Remember what I was saying about making sure you look at stuff that is painted? Not only are they worth a little bit more, they also have some history on them. This one tells the story of the ancient Sultan Murad, in the year 4867, and the corrupt administrator of Kizilth, which outlawed association with dogs. What a terrible person. No more good boys. This one also gave me a quest. Since I have an axe now, I'm actually going to start getting axe proficiency, which is going to make my axe stats a little better. Ask me anything about axes, said the dumb turtle. And the rest of this zone was just a whole bunch of smacking into these snapjaws. And it was taking a little bit to find their hideout, so I jumped to the overworld and fast traveled to the Snapjaw Fort. It's very easy to do. Each one of these tiles on the overworld is made up of 9 smaller maps, so sometimes it can be tricky to find stuff in the mountain. And now we're here. Walking through the waters, we spot a Snapjaw warrior, a slightly stronger variation on the normal Snapjaw. Not really a threat though, but behind him is a wet salt hopper. These guys are a little bit tricky. One of the first kind of difficulty tests of Caves of Cud. These guys can kill a low-level character quite swiftly, and are a bit of a threat. I should be able to take him out, though, if I put him to sleep. Time to emit my gases. It seems that knocking them over made them incapable of dodging. I guess the loud snoring sounds isn't gonna make my attacks less accurate. I'm kind of a evil turtle variation of that character from Smash Brothers that puts people to sleep. Whatever it's called. I locate a couple more Snapjaws, and them flying to pieces spontaneously causes me to rapidly level up to level 4, and we're starting to get somewhere. But unfortunately, your intelligence is what gives you skill points when you level up. And because I don't have a brain, I only have 100 skill points, so this may take a little bit to level up and actually get some usable abilities. Oh well, back to whacking. There was a few chests with some stuff in them. One of them had water. That's just free money there. I'm now doubly as rich. And the pink chest is what has the quest items in it. Schmelly excitedly collects the items, and feels a rush of new experience running into their veins. And because we are level 5, our genome begins to enter an excited state, and we spend 4 mutation points to buy a new mutation. And obviously we take the correct decision. We take multiple arms, because who doesn't want more arms for your arms when you have arms on your arms? Excellent. Well, best clean up the place. Can't let any of these Snapjaws live. Snapjaw Warlord, also not too threatening. It's always best when the Snapjaws friendly fire themselves as well. And I finally have 150 skill points, so I can put a little bit of points into my axe proficiency. I take the skill Hook and Drag. It allows me to hack something with my axe, pull the axe into them forcefully, and drag them away. It helps me get out of bad situations, as well as does quite a bit of damage while they're dragging. Plus, I can drag them into my snooze farts. I also find another item with paintings on it. It's a helmet, which I can't wear because of my horn, but it's got some cool information and history, and we get yet another quest. Well, best get back to town. This turtle is now becoming a delivery turtle. And while we're walking, we discover Kakyum, the fashionable, legendary albino ape. Any of these pinkish magenta characters here are legendary. Killing them will piss off anybody who likes them, and sharing water with them will make anybody who hates them also hate you. I really like the apes, they're a fun faction, so I decide to share my water with them. Once we've shared the drink, they could share a secret with me, but in my naivety, I thought this character would last a very long time, so I decided to wait, in the hopes that I would have the opportunity to make them into companions by increasing my reputation with them even more. But that may or may not ever happen. All of that murder made Schmelly hungry, so Schmelly's gonna eat Schmunch, using the ingredients an Uyir seed, a sprinkle of dog hair, and a nip of aluminium mint. More like aluminium. Anyways, with our tummy filled, might as well fast travel. And I immediately discover whatever a Nibal is. Seems to be some ruins. Oh well, I'm not in a rush. Let's explore it. Having a peek at the statue, we discover a secret about Reshef, who closed the gates to the Tomb of the Eaters and abducted the throne and dissolved the Sultanate in order to lift the curse of Gear. Well, that's interesting. All right, let's explore this maze-like place. We find a bizarre contraption, a gun. Yeah, excellent. And of course, we should eat another Lunchable and venture back to town. Turning in the jerky to chugs in the feather serpent. That's us the response. Adventurer, you have our thanks. Our village owes you a debt. For now, please choose a reward from our stockpile as payment for your service. Wandering the salt dunes is no way yada yada yada, get it. I get some XP, and I take a bio-scanning bracelet as my reward. This goes onto one of your arms, is powered, and tells you how much HP enemies have left. So I equip it real quick, and then I doodle my way over to Drinks Near Serpents, and turn in the other quest. Adventurer, you have our thanks. You've proven yourself a friend to our village. Here, take this recoiler, and return whenever your throat is dry. And then they offer me this other thing, but it seems like a lot of work and very complicated, and I am Silly Turtle, so I'm gonna say no. But if you are playing this game, and you want to take part in the main quest line, this is how you would do that from this point forward. Talk to this character who gives you this quest, and follow the instructions. And I'm sure it'll lead you in the right direction. But for now, I need to drop off some of my loot and exchange it for some water. I noticed that the local camel man trader's inventory has an engraved item in it, so I take a sneaky peek at it and read the histories that it contains, which shows me the location of a historic site. After trading, I am very silly and not smart, so instead of breaking some of the items that I discovered, I decide to go to the village tinkerer and ask them to identify these strange tubes I found. Normally you can just examine these, but if you have a very low intelligence stat, you might break them. The first item I ask them to identify for me turns out to be a skulk injector. Essentially, it gives you very good underground agility, but gives you debuffs if you're above ground. A situational temporary buff. We also got a blaze injector, which gives me a lot of heat resistance and makes me deal higher heat damage. It also makes it impossible for me to be frozen. These are all items that I found around the Snapjaws. And I decide to go off exploring, because at this point, the world is an oyster, and it has consumed me, and I shall eat it from the inside out. I think that's how the saying goes. One thing Schmelly knows for certain is that there's absolutely no shortage of ruins in these sand dunes, and they're full of these silly texts that smart people use to get bigger, smarter brain. But Schmelly hopes that they're valuable enough to be sold. As we journey, we collect as many books as we can, in between snack times. We also discover the workshop of a strange smart person. These workshops are scattered around Cud. They're owned by the Merchants Guild. They're legendary, damn near impossible to kill unless you're pretty high level, often have really interesting alignments with the factions, and sell some really cool endgame loot. A very valuable thing for us to be aware of. No matter. Nothing I can afford right now, anyway. And we continue traveling north towards the funny-looking building up there. And, the one place in Cud that actually has some peace and quiet, aside from the crazy religious zealots just screaming some sort of nonsense all the time. Speaking of zealots, we go speak to one of them and ask what he's all about. Hearing he's interested in the weird statue man that we discovered earlier, I gladly share my secrets, and he rewards me with some intelligence. That's video game speak for experience. It's not quite enough to level us up, but thankfully just inside of his tent is an altar, and such a excellent zealot as this duder is, he doesn't even read or learn about his own religion. Well, I guess we'll have to do that for him, and give the secrets back to him, right after looking at them for ourselves. But, silly brain like shiny thing, and there's a big shiny building up there. Let's go peek inside. What kind of weird critter are you, friend? Oh, it's a librarian. They want my books. Well, they're absolutely no use to me, so take them. And I gain more experience, and maybe a semblance of intelligence. The librarian explains, "We're in but the first phase of foundation. The church has amassed a splendid collection of scripts through the years. Glorious Shekinah, praise be upon him, gifted us with several caches. The Uramites work day and night, reproducing them in the scriptorum, and I have taken it upon myself to beseech travelers for their rarest finds, often come from the least likely places, like a turtle." Because I'm confused about what the value of a library is in the first place, I ask why they're making it, and they respond with, "You share the pessimism of my kin, and several of the priests as well. My heart hears you, but listen to my words, and maybe you will come to feel as I do. To devalue wisdom is to devalue the phosphorescence, the shines in the void refracting light, illuminating those around her. So does the written wisdom of our elders. The machinery of chromium is complex, and in its divinity, don't we do a disservice to our fathers when we remain ignorant of it?" Hey, what's that? That's a cool looking wall. Anyways, there's some art on the walls. They have interesting pictures. I'm gonna look at those for a little bit. This is an exquisitely detailed high-relief cut from precious Carillion marble. It depicts the sacred joining, as recounted by Shekinah, the father to the temple high priests. In the early dawn of our universe, the Argent Fathers... How about this one? This is a high-relief cut with exquisite detail from rare Carillion marble. It depicts the edification as chanted in the Distracted. See, I'm more interested in the fact that there's a horn coming out of my head that needs leveling up, so I'm going to do that instead. And I'm increasing the rank of my horn to 2, and then 3. But silly turtle likes shiny thing. What's this? It's a hologram. Gloria Shekinah, Argent Adonis. The first father poses in luminous mummery. Oh, so like Dio. Got it. Anyways, let's go shopping. Wandering around outside of the funny building, we find a Dromad caravan. Having a peek in his inventory, he's got a lot of odd trinkets and weird artifacts. And some really fancy axes. Man, I would axe so much for that, but there's no way I'd be able to kill him, and he's not going to give it to me for cheap, and I certainly don't have the drams for it, so I'll have to go take my water elsewhere. Booking it about, we find some more lore on one of the neighboring tiles. And it gives me more quests. And more history as well on another vial. I found this weird tent that kind of led to nowhere, and there was a weird, pile of bones back here. I guess Jack the Ripper does in fact live here. I was super excited to find a hookah, but it needs some water, and I'm too cheap to give it any. I briefly speak with the local warden. It seems like Fungus like her for reprogramming their least favorite robot. Well, that was nice of her. I'm gonna share some water, because I like mushrooms. The warden likes me slightly more, and the villagers of whoever that is really don't like me now. That's okay, though. You always want to be friends with the wardens. I even told her the location of that Snapjaw fort that I killed. Checking the world map, I realized that one of those quest locations that I discovered on a scroll or a painting or something earlier is highlighted, and it's close by. Why don't we go visit? On the way there, though, I find this place that's full of mounted machine guns. Seems a little sketchy, but, you know, I've explored more dangerous. I begin wandering around and poking around. I find a shrine, get yet more quests. After killing a couple giant amoebas and watching that other guy almost die, I walk up to that sentient rifle and beat the crap out of it and take its innards for myself, and almost die to an electronic spoder. Terrifying. All of this wandering and getting lost seems to have gotten me hungry, so I'm gonna eat some Dromad dander, a nip of noble salt, a liberated Dawn Glider's face, and an abstract Dawn Glider's face. What the hell? Alright then. Anyways, let's travel to that cool place that I've been seeking. And before I move into what looks like a place with a lot... Seems like this place has more books. Also some very angry pigs that shoot stuff out of their snouts at me. They're red, so I guess they're gonna move really fast. Although I'll have to dispatch of this amoeba first. It's the bigger threat in the house. And we're gonna have to give the audience a curtain for their eyes, probably, because this is about to be violent. The yellow pig over there is less dangerous than the red ones. The red ones shoot stuff at me, while the yellow one just has 2 heads. It does more damage in melee range, but isn't much of a threat to me. The way I'm going to deal with this area so that I don't just die to a firing squad is I'm just going to kite in and out of the edge of the map. The sun seems to be going down, so it shouldn't be too difficult to just slowly pull them all into where I'm standing, so that they one by one come up and fight me and I don't get shot to death by the rest of them. Easy peasy. Once I've finished turning all of the pigs into bacon, I then start exploring the rest of the ruins on the top level, and I found some engraved armor. Unfortunately, I can't wear it because of my big old shell, but it is engraved and it has history. Something I didn't mention earlier, that quest that I finished that gave me a recoiler, it needs a battery. I could take the battery out of my bioscanning bracelet, which is showing me the HP of the enemies, but I'd rather have my bracelet. Once it has a battery in it, I can then teleport back to the starting town when I'm out of combat. So I'll have to find a battery for it soon. And I slowly begin, piece by piece, zone by zone, screen by screen, putting the bacon to sleep, stabbing it, lining them up in doorways, and slaughtering it, and trying not to die. Thankfully, they give pretty good experience. This dungeon wasn't that difficult. It just kind of required a little bit of careful footsie work, because I didn't want to get completely surrounded by them, as they would actually be quite the threat to kill. I did have a narrow, close call with these centipedes, because they kind of hit pretty hard, and there was a couple gun turrets that could have caused me some grief if I didn't see them first, but it's all good. Spark ticks can do some surprising damage. They're the little electro spiders, but they die really easily. And I began just cleaving my way through the rest of that floor. Picked up all the books, moved on downward. The next layer was more of the same. More pigs of varying varieties. Some with bullets, slug snouts they call them. Some with 2 heads. Much experience was gained. And because of my low intelligence, I still don't have enough points for another ability. I really want that dismember. It would be very useful. I could dismember the guns off of turrets and then run around like Master Chief. But thankfully I have my sleep gas, and it works on just about anything with flesh. Getting peckish. time to eat another soup with a literal smidgen of dromad dander. Feeling a little bit bored of the area, I decided to take a skulk injector just to see what it was like, and it made everything very blue. But thankfully, it did make dodging things a little bit less painful. Moving down into the lower layer, there was some knoll worms. They also died pretty quickly. And we find a shrine to Meshid, the jeweled child of birds. Gotta love the history. Thankfully, that awful blue filter wore off finally, and I could continue down onto the lower layer, working my way through the Baconators. And it was there that we spotted it, the pink chest, guarded by yet another piece of bacon. I quickly started hacking at it and then had to examine it, because this wasn't any slug snout, because this was a legendary slug snout named Nequitach Ethar, and it was the leader of the Church of the Vermilion Gemstone. Well, that's a thing. All right, it seems to be hated by the Cult of the Coiled Lamb for repeatedly beating them at dice. I'd love to know how that pig rolls dice. It's also disliked by the villagers of Equililymore for insulting their seas. Lucky for our turtle, we're gonna be eating back bacon tonight. I use my sleep gas to its greatest effect and try to put the thing to sleep. And as quickly as I can, I hack it to shreds. It goes down quite quickly. So long, piggy. And in the chest, I find the shrew gloves of Shegesh. When reading histories in CUD, sometimes it tells you what the item is if you find the complete history. In this case, the only piece of history of this region I'd found was the location, so I had no idea what the item was. Examining it, it's a pair of gloves, which gives +2 mental armor and +2 brain intelligence. My brain finally grows some wrinkles. Maybe I can examine my own artifacts now without spending water on it. That's exciting. I also try to read one of my books, and I got a couple more lines out of it this time, but still not much. Ah well. Time to clean out the rest of these piggies, because it's time to go make a very generous donation to the library, and maybe try and purchase an axe. So back to running around in circles around the bazaar we go, right after we drop off all of these books. Hello, librarian. Please take all of my books. Yes, thank you. Very much for that 18,765 experience. Since I'm not even remotely close to being able to afford the Crysteel axe, I tried to buy that Fulcrete battle axe, and even that was too expensive for my poor little turtle. So instead, I simply cried myself to sleep and placed some chairs on the ground, sat in them so that I would get a slight bonus to my intelligence and do slightly better at examining my artifacts. I didn't even break any of them. Well, except for one. Oops. But now I have a nice little collection of time dilation, fungicide, and acid grenades. Since I have no hope of buying that battle axe, I will simply just sell all of my excess stuff. At least I have a lot of carry capacity. And I jump back up to the desert to see what we can find. There's gotta be something nearby to explore. Checking my quest overlay, I notice that there's some interesting looking spots. But the further to the right you go on CUD's overworld, the more hostile the areas become. So our brave little turtle decided, maybe we'll head out there soon. After all, we are level 14, so I begin exploring around the overworld until we find a lair. It's the lair of Ka, the legendary Dawn Glider. Well, I don't really have any way of shooting up, you see, because Dawn Gliders can fly, and I can't. So if it flies away, I have no way of getting it down, unless I catch it in my sleep gas. But these chameleons are some easy XP for the moment, so I might as well simply roll through all of them. I find a big Scorpiock and do the same thing to him, and move down into the lower layer to see if I can find this so-called Dawn Glider. I find some more lizards, and some irritable tortoises. Thankfully they're friendly because I am turtle. The loot down here seems to be alright. I find some gold. And a Fulcrete maul! Well, I wasn't able to buy the Fulcrete axe or the Crysteel axe, but hey, I have some extra arms. Might as well chuck this maul in there. I wonder if this maul has a Chuck E. Cheese. And suddenly, there it is. Ka himself. He is very tough, and there's obvious burning in the distance. He's loved by birds and unshelled reptiles, hated by the dromad merchants, and absolutely hated by grazing hideonists for giving one of their kind an unfavorable horoscope reading. Well, that sounds kind of petty. I mean, horses are petty, this is true. All right, lizard, let's see what you got. I try to hook and drag it after putting it to sleep because it fell on the ground, and I do it successfully. I begin to pull it backwards into the sleep gas, and down here in the bottom you can see, because I've now activated my bioscanning bracelet, its health. It's got 379 of it. I have 144, and currently only 103. This is going to be a tough fight, but I've taken on tougher fights, and I have some turtle friends here to defend me. Not that they'll fight back or assist me in any way, but they're perfectly good blocking meat shields. So whenever I get injured, I will simply run behind them because they're not going to move, and wait until I heal up, and then head back down into the fight. Get back in there, Schmelly. You got this, bud. The very tough Kaka is still cleaved after the first chunk of the fighting, which is good for us. And I hit snooze on his alarm clock once again. This puts him to sleep and dazes the friendly tortoises. There's also a Dreambeard here, which is a lizard type thing. I give it a few good hits and then back off behind the turtles once again. Peering around the corner of sleeping turtles, I can see the salty bloody Kaka. Not a lot of hits have been made on it yet, but I still have faith. I move forward and release my sleep gas once again, putting all the turtles back to sleep. And we begin trading blows. Not huge chunks of damage, but I get it down pretty close to 300 health. However, I lose faith and feel the need to retreat and then get impaled on a spike. Well, that's awesome. I'm also starving to death apparently, so I'm just gonna quickly make lunch, don't mind me. And today seems to be a good day to die, so I charge back in. And it actually seems that my irritable tortoises are now on my side. Isn't that glorious? I'm being assisted by one of the most annoying enemies in the game, because they just take a ton of damage and have a lot of armor. A lot of early level characters can't even damage them. I can because of my horns. However, for most start out characters I've played, I just walk around them because they're very slow. Now, I am doing quite a lot of damage to this Dawn Glider. It is sort of a dragon type thing. Hopping behind my tortoises, which are currently sleeping, that the Dawn Glider's incapable of passing, I continue to kite it. And it was then that I made a fatal error. I decided to throw my acid grenade directly at it. I had hoped that it would cause the Dawn Glider to be stuck, but it friendly fired my turtles. I had to kill my valuable allies, and my wall of meat was gone. So, because they were also fighting with the Dawn Glider, I ran away and healed up as best I could before turning back around to face my mistakes. It was cleaved and paralyzed and on the ground, but constantly waking up and hitting me back. Because every time I went to heal, it would also heal. It was only at about 230 HP. Hit after hit, this fight took forever. It was terrifying and kind of the most clenching moment I've had so far in the run. Crazy creature, loved by birds. What kind of monster could love a creature like this? Simply slaying anything that it touches, breathing fire. Thankfully, my sleep gas is quite effective on the thing. While it was dazed, I ate a witchwood bark. Now, witchwood bark is a healing item, but it has a high chance to cause confusion, and that's what happened. So now everything is scrambled. Fortunately, the layout of the map is still the same, and because I'm pretty good at, taking a glance at the map before I eat one of these, I just kind of count the number of tiles and the directions I can walk, so I don't bump into walls. And I just kept fighting it, watching my health bar very carefully. It didn't actually take me out as quickly as I thought it would. Moments later, I had to eat a second witchwood bark, which caused the same effect to happen a second time, except I was walking away this time around. I managed to drop my sleep gas once again, and it was just on the outside, so I hooked it and pulled it in, eating one of my final witchwood barks to recover some more health as it continues to snooze on the ground. I'm just sitting there hoping it's not going to start hitting me as I watch the map jump around. Terrifying, truly. I drop it down to 7 health, 5 health, and it remains stunned. A few more hits, and the creature falls. A glorious victory for a stupid, stupid turtle. Talk about failing upwards. His only sense of intelligence is a pair of mittens, after all. Upon reaching level 15, our turtle's genome enters an excited state once again, and he grows a second heart. And we gain the reputations from the legendary kill. Well done, Schmelly. Because of all the book redemptions and the fact that I haven't put anything into skills and powers in a while, I have 412 skill points. Look at that, I'm rich. So I put a whole bunch of points into endurance and poison tolerance, which leaves us with 62. Heading back to the Silt, I go and I speak to the Zealot. I don't have any secrets, though. I must have forgotten. Oh well, intelligence stat, eh? I also carried the corpse of that creature that almost killed us back to the church, and tried to eat it, but I wasn't hungry enough. I'll just leave it on the ground then. I level up my hearts ever just so much, which gives me some more toughness, increases my health. And I distribute a few more skill points into Calloused. Having a peek at my inventory, we've got quite a few weapons. Should probably grab multi-weapon fighting at some point as well. Back onto the overworld, we go and explore some ruins. This'll be quick though, because these are only 1 floor each. The first one we wander around is full of lush greenery, and a lot of cactuses and slime. A lot of rock, almost nothing of value in fact. Very underwhelming. So we decide to run around in the mountains a little bit, saying hello to the turtles. Seeing nothing of interest, I start moving through the overworld, until I get lost. Typical turtle. Well, time to run around until I regain my bearings, I suppose. I might be lost, and these gnolls certainly don't want to give me directions. Die, Snapjaws! You think you were weak before. Wait until you see me now. And we are still lost, but we discover Alabal. And it seems to be filled with Snapjaw brutes. A slightly more dangerous variant of the Snapjaw. Fur matted in blood-brushed clumps across her skin. Long fangs break the plane of her bristly snout. Hind legs tick and she reaches her forepaws for the reassurance of dirt. In the earth's lightless recesses, troglodytes are reclaimed by the primal forces that once shucked them towards civilization. Grim. Anyway, they throw poison spears. Best kill them quickly. Don't let their creepy description fool you. They are still very weak. This area has a quest item in it though, which is interesting. Grabbing it, it seems to be some sort of cyborg attachment for a Truekin. Looks like a chair of sorts. Weird. Bet you it's valuable though. Maybe I can now buy that Crysteel battle axe. Absolutely, it is a permanently attachable chair that a Truekin can use. Not a mutant though. Something for a different run perhaps. But for me, this is a valuable trade good. Anyway, let's yoink the books. We also find a few carbide weapons from those troglodytes per se. And then running around, we discover what looks like the edges of a village. And I find a settlement. Well, that's exciting. It's the village of Nabal. These villages are scattered around Cud, very similar to the random one that we started in. And they all have at least one quest. The town has some orbs scattered about the place, and we find out that they worshipped that legendary dawn glider that I killed. Well, definitely don't tell them that I killed it, yes? Oh well. They really worship that dawn glider. I almost feel bad. Oh well. Let's eat their food anyway. We start to metabolize the meal, and whenever you deal fire damage, there is a 10% chance you heal to full 15% of the time. Huh, that would actually combo pretty nicely with that other meal from the other town that we started in. But at the same time, I'm probably not going to learn to cook both of them because I'm really dumb. So let's just see if we can get a quest. But the quest giver of this town is something special. Morlu Li Lob, the Sage. Pointy, expressive scoots range across the broad back of the rendered interdimensional keratin. After looking at it, this note pops up on screen. There exists a dimension known as the inert oval, and we write it down in our journal. That's wild. We must speak with this thing. You don't see these very often. Welcome to the village of Nabal, Nomad, along with other provisions to help you better scour the rust caves for treasure. Above all else, you may drink our fresh water and quench your thirst. Live and drink. Don't mind if I do. Water ritual with you. And now Equanes hate me. Okay. The funny thing is, this interdimensional turtle could teach me the skill Suppressive Fire, which is a rifle skill, but I don't have enough reputation with it. If I had a love injector, I could make it fall in love with me and it would join me. This would be an incredible ally. What a rare find. Unfortunately, I don't really want to learn to cook that meal, because I know the ingredients will be hard to find. So instead, simply live and drink, Water Sister. I ask them for work and they say, I bow down to the indigo end that you are here, friend. Visiting pagans came to our village the other day. While breaking bread, they spoke of a delightful place. Biraquar Fringe. They wouldn't reveal the location, and will you find it for us? It would be a great dower to the safety prospects of our village. We will pay you for your service. We hear it is located somewhere between 4 and 8 parasangs west of Tashru-un, Kiwur Shire. Live and drink. Okay, I don't know where that is, but I'm sure it's on the overworld now. I will accept this quest. After a quick scan, it appears that this shire is quite close by, so we go there. It's in the mountains, meaning I'm gonna have to go off-path a lot to actually complete this one. It appears to be some sort of pig farm. I quickly make lunch, which includes a thorn from a jilted lover, a mung bean, and a sprinkle of Equimax hair. Nom nom, we eat the meal. And right as I'm going to leave, a bunch of Snapjaws and a salamander appear, so I just quickly dispatch of them, and then I start humming the classic song. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. So the problem with these quests where you need to head in a specific direction is they literally mean in a straight line, so you can't deviate away from the path. But I'm already finding distractions. Nathodus Noshara, the chosen by Shekinah. This is a legendary robot, which is being followed by a bunch of zealots. Now, if I were to do a ritual with this, I would need oil, fun fact. I found them quite amusing, but that was about it. Instead, I just watched them as they killed the things that I was going to have to kill, looked to see if they had anything worth trading for and decided to not, so instead I continued through the canyons. This pathing got very complicated because I actually had to go off path a couple of times. Up to, down to, and I was just kind of keeping a mental note of how many tiles I moved in a direction. Once I broke through the mountain range, though, I still had a few tiles left I needed to walk through, so I just knew it was between either one up or one down from where I started. So I'd move forward, poke my head up a layer, move forward, peek into another tile, and I found a Dromad caravan. So I checked his wares, and just offloaded a bunch of weaponry I didn't need. Moments later, at the edge of the next tile, I found a location. But it wasn't the one I was looking for. I did, however, find a Scorpiok, which I killed, and some plants, and another Dromad. I decide to trade for some injectors and a few nuggets, because nuggets are lighter than water, and I offload a pile of stuff. After finishing the trade, it does cost me a couple of drams, 75, but I have plenty to spare, and water's heavy. And thus the quest continues through the deserts, until I find the Baikwar Fringe, and it gives me the experience for completing this step. These quests are a bit petty at this point, though. And I explore the area, finding a weird artifact, which I'm now smart enough to examine and realize it's a grenade. You'd think that would be obvious. Nothing much of note there, so I head back to the village and inform the interdimensional turtle of my findings. And his response is, "Wanderer, you have our thanks. Our village owes you a debt. For now, please choose a reward from our stockpile as payment for your service. As a reward, I choose a hover sled, which is essentially a backpack. It's just a sled that floats behind you, or floats nearby, technically, and adds a whole bunch of carry capacity. Excellent, I can carry more water." Taking my ill-gotten gains and newfound riches, we run back up to the Silt to see if I can yet afford that axe. I go up to the Dromad trader and begin trading, and after ponying up just about everything in my inventory, it costs me 5 drams of water on top, but including that quest item, which I don't want because I am a turtle, I buy the Crysteel Battle Axe. Full of confidence, I spend an additional pile of drams and items on some herberries, a very powerful healing item. It's time for us to get serious and go deeper into the wilderness. Briefly, I donate the remainders of my books to the library for an additional bump of experience. Proud and excited, the turtle feels full of a new level of knowledge that he'd never felt before, and began moving off into the wilds, slaughtering Snapjaws like they weren't even there, crushing them like paper, and moving into the jungles. Giant leeches fell like nothing. To be fair, they kinda are. And our first Seeker of the Sightless Way appears to the northeast and burrows a channel through the psychic ether and begins to sunder our mind. A terrifying moment, but not for Schmelly, for he didn't even know what was happening and just heard a weird buzzing sound and charged the Seeker of the Sightless Way as he began to gain a strange headache and hacked him so hard that he dies in one hit with the Crysteel Battle Axe. Absolutely glorious. Perish in pain. Silly Seeker. Thanks for the butcher knife. I might use that later. I began aimlessly wandering through the jungles, fighting the Nafatali warriors, who are not super strong in and of themselves, but they have a power, or their jeers have a power, which is shame. A body time fit to living in the smalls of spiral roots, kept warm by a layer of symbiotic moss fur. Bright scanning eyes peer out of the self-same mask of her minyan, making her face a blazing portrait of togetherness, laced, burned, and painted to point. She has an ability called Jeer. Jeer is a relatively debilitating debuff, which I've now been hit by. You can see it down in the active effects down in the bottom left hand of the screen, and it's also causing my character to blink back and forth as a colon. But I quickly kill it, and then begin working on her friends, with my sleep gas and very strong battle axe. Just up to the northwest, we see one of my favorite creatures in Caves of Cud, a slumberling. You nearly mistake it for a boulder, and then you spot a crease in her hide as she draws a slow, hibernative breath. Suddenly you understand the saying, among the pig farmers, always fear large rocks. I think this is what attacked Indiana Jones in the tunnel. We won't be fighting that anytime soon. As I continued my wanderings, I found another Snapjaw fort, and it was like taking candy from Snapjaws. Easy peasy. Feeling very adventurous, I decided to go deeper into the jungles, and I had to make myself a quick meal first, of course. Rummaging in the surroundings, we find a dragonfly's left mid-leg, some maimed salt, and a dash of gentle beetlebum chitin, and a starshwade root. Delicious. And I moved slightly north, and that was when I saw them. A Goldfolk shotgunner. The Goldfolk never travel alone, and bring powerful weapons. The Goldfolk sowers throw grenades in a cluster bomb. They can do considerable amounts of damage to many foes in a wide range. Of course, if you kill them, you can steal their grenades, but it's best to run if you see goats. But our turtle chose otherwise, and began to fight, and quickly took the two-handed full creep battle axe off the ground, as well as the rifle that he dropped. Happy with the loot, he pressed deeper into the jungles, and continued fighting the goats. Filled with a brim of new confidence, having slain the goat folk, but still knowing that they were not far behind, thinking to himself, they shall know me as the Schmelly one when I return, with these riches, with the full crete hammer in his third hand. The scenery had begun to change slightly. Full-crete walls were jutting out of the ground, their pristine colors glinting under the bright light of Cud's sun. Strange. The turtle had never seen anything like this before and didn't quite know what to make of it. As he came around a corner, he heard clicking in the distance and saw a strange rifle. Not like the rifle turrets that were commonplace in the great deserts that he had journeyed so frequently. Backing away, wisely, continued exploring this new space, spotting some strange contraptions in the distance. And the usual spark ticks, of course, which died very quickly. Thinking, we would take a closer look at those chain turrets, we popped up through the top and immediately took a whole bunch of critical hits. But the turtle was filled with that confidence from before still and charged directly towards it and tried to dismember the turret, hoping that he would make a clean cut and be able to run around like Master Chief. Unfortunately, he just cut off the sensor array, but it was about as close as we could have gotten. Sadly, this wasn't a sword build, and I certainly do not have access to the skill Disarm, which is significantly more consistent at taking off turrets. Important bits that allow you to do the shooty-shooty with the gun thingy. Continuing to book it around, I spot another gun turret off in the distance. Instead of giving the turret a direct line of fire, we sidestepped to the right to avoid the chain turret's immediate shots to try and flank it, and encounter a whole bunch of goat folk. A sower, a bully, and also a bloated leech behind me. And off in the distance sat Ra-Ha, Whitefinger, the goat folk shaman of Clan Yer. A braid of roasted frog skin stretches taut over his swollen pectorals and fastens a satchel to his hip. Hooves are stained with an unclassified mixture of blood and spittle flies from his bleating mouth into a tuft of scraggle chin hair. It was at this point that I knew that I'd fucked up. I did really want to know what his engraved, painted, weird artifact was, because it would have 2 pieces of history on it, so still full of the absurd amounts of confidence that I was under, we began attacking, fighting and almost immediately killing the first goat that I saw. I picked up what I could and started fighting the goat folk bully. I did a pretty considerable amount of damage and turned to the left, and at that point I knew it was time to run, because there was a lot of goats right there. The goats never travel alone, after all, especially when a leader is in their mix, so we began running. Taking one step north, we spotted a bunch of fire ants. These shoot fire and are very strong. So our turtle began taking evasive maneuvers, and the bugs were following, very close behind. Shortly behind them were the goats. Immediately, chaos begins to erupt, things began catching ablaze, and Schmelly is now terrified. Fire ants themselves aren't the biggest threat, but they were blocking my pathway and could very easily slow me down. The goat folk were behind me, and there was way too many of them for me to fight. Checking my inventory to see exactly what I have at my disposal, I do have a lot of healing items, the herberry as well as witchwood bark, and some bandages, and use my sleeping gas to try and make up the best defense I could, and began fighting with the goat folk shaman. Trading blows, Schmelly ended the goat folk shaman's life. And of course, we are now despised by the goat folk. And some other people decide they like me a lot more, but how's that really helping me at this point? So I began trying to make my escape. After being briefly set on fire by one of the ants, I do manage to put the fire out. I begin making evasive maneuvers, trying to find the tightest hallways possible. They had me completely cornered. Running north, I just kept finding more of them. And where there wasn't goat folk, there was ants. And where there wasn't ants, there was goat folk. In and out of the ruins, I tightened my carapace to increase my armor value, as best I could, to try and heal. But I was getting repeatedly cleaved by the goat folk. So I untightened my carapace and used the sleep gas to try and knock them over so that I could unblock myself from the pathway. After killing the nearest few goat folk, I attempt to recoil, but it's no use, they're too close. Having a brief peek at this painted carbide battle axe, which tells the story of how Milishid, while leading a small army in Kilipomstead, challenged the Sultan of Cud to a duel over the sanctioned persecution of stargazers, and he won and took the crown at the age of 70. We also found a pretty incredible ape fur cloak, and this awesome engraved carbide longsword, which gave us a single quest. I wasn't able to use the recoiler, which would teleport me back to town because hostiles were too close. So I began carefully moving through the bushes to hopefully make it to a safe place where I could click the button and get to safety. But the goats had me cornered. Trying to fend them off, I began to fight once again, putting them to sleep, knocking them over, slitting their throats, and repeating. Moving south, I encounter a turret as well as more fire ants. Watching the tree in front of me getting completely vaporized, I stepped into the shade outside of the sensor range of the small turret and waited for the ant to approach me. After quickly killing it, I decided to make a run for it. Taking too many of the witchwood barks, I became confused again, scrambling my awareness of the area that I was moving through. Things seemed quiet till the goats reappeared. Moving south, I was immediately surrounded. Putting them to sleep as best I could, and eating one more piece of witchwood bark. Becoming confused, the turtle began to flail and fight madly, and as his foes went in and out of sleep, Schmelly ran north, just far enough away from their prying eyes to use the recoiler. But it was no use. The recoiler teleporting device made a soft click. Schmelly had forgotten to install the power cell, meaning it had no power. He would need to take apart another device and install the cell in the recoiler. By the time that was completed, Schmelly would be dead. Taking a shulk injector as a final hope to dig to safety, moments later, he was set ablaze, pulverized, bit, gored, and full of shotgun shells. And at that moment, the final drips of life left the body of old Schmelly. Never mess with the goat folk, for they do not travel alone. Beware the smell of roasted boar while walking in the jungles of the caves of Cud. All right, everybody, full disclosure here. This was intended as like a de-rusting run, but I did have so much fun with it that I decided that it was worth preserving in this format because it wasn't super long. So I'm kind of using this as a test run, to be completely honest with everybody watching. This is intended as a test run of Caves of Cud content on this channel. If you are happy with this video, if you enjoyed this video, and if you would like to see more of this especially, I want you to go into the comments section of this video and leave a comment that says, "Live and drink." And then, if you would like to see more Caves of Cud content on this channel, I want you to go into my Dwarf Fortress movies playlist and leave a comment on each one of those videos. There's 3 of them currently, with the words, "Live and drink, friend." I realize this is kind of gaming the YouTube system to a degree, but I don't take sponsorships on this channel, and the way I make money is by these videos getting interactions, because that informs the YouTube machine to do the YouTube thing. So, I have to say a real quick thank you to everybody for watching this video once again. Take care of yourselves, stay hydrated, and never travel alone in the forest when you smell the scent of roasted boar. Live and drink, friends, and may your throat never run dry. Until next time, when we go for another adventure in the caves of Cud.